Welcome back to the Karen Cave. The other day, I love making a big pot of chicken soup. I like to make it to freeze it for a rainy day. I like to make it to freeze it. Sometimes when the kids get sick, they call and say, "Do you have any of that chicken broth?" But whatever comes out of that chicken soup, one of the best things that comes out of it is all the wonderful meat from the chicken. And I take it all off the bone. This is the 2 big chicken breasts that I have. And it's always fun to make extra meals. Later this fall, or even this winter, I'm going to make another big pot of chicken soup and teach you how to make that. This is my grandfather's recipe. He was the one that was the chef in World War I, and this chicken soup recipe has been handed down and handed down. And I will teach you how to make that, and I'm also going to teach you how to make 7 meals from this pot of chicken soup. But one of the meals that I have a taste for tonight was not my grandmother's chicken stew, because there's 2 different ways to make chicken stews. But this is a southern chicken stew where the pastry is very thin. My grandmother, that was from Hungary, actually born in Austria, and all the different lines in Europe were different and moved around. She makes a chicken paprikas, and that is with the big dumplings, and I'm going to teach you how to make that as well later this year. That is a delicious, and I make it in this big pot as well. But today I want to make, with this chicken, is I want to be able to take this cooked chicken from this big pot of chicken soup and shred it up and put it into some, I guess what I call southern pastry. And that's just basically taking some flour and some water, mixing it together, getting a dough, and rolling that out really thin. And then we're going to boil it in some chicken broth that I had from my chicken soup. This little kettle here is my grandfather's. He uses a lot for gravy, but I have a lot of chicken broth in here. So I'm going to take that chicken broth, I'm going to make some pastry, and then we're going to boil that together, and I'm going to shred up some of this chicken and put it in there, and we're just going to have an amazing meal. And I've got 2 side dishes here that Grandma Lee always had with her chicken pastry, and I'll share those. So let's get started making our dough. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is make our pastry, and you can use as much flour or as little flour as that you want. I've got here about 1.5 cups, and then I'm going to start adding some water to it slowly to get it to a nice consistency of just a nice dough ball, a nice firm dough ball. You don't want it too loose and you don't want it too thick because you want to be able to roll that dough out. So I'll keep adding some here to get this dough to come together, and just very simple recipe. There are times where you can take this dough and you can actually use the chicken broth and mix it with that. It's going to give you just a little bit different consistency than you would water, because your chicken broth has kind of an oil in it from cooking with the chicken and all the vegetables. So we'll get that to come together. You can see how it's starting to come together. And I haven't made a lot here. I'm just making a little bit for. And then you'll take this dough and we're going to put it, add a little bit of flour here. Just get a spoon. Use that. Just a little bit. And then you're going to want to put some flour on your board to be able to roll it out. And you want to roll it out as thin as you can get it. I know that pastry can also be bought in the freezer section of your grocery store, and some of that pastry is a little bit thicker, but Grandma Lee always rolled hers out and it was just nice and thin, and then you put it in this pan with that chicken broth and it cooks up so nicely. So let's get this little dough ball out here. First I'm going to go ahead and put some flour down on my board, and make sure we get it covered real well so it doesn't stick. And then we'll drop this little dough. You can see it's just a small little dough and get our rolling pin here. I have a nice marble one. Put a little bit of flour on that as well. I'm going to start rolling it. Put a little bit more on there. If you can see that or not. I'm going to roll this out and I'll show you how I'm rolling it out, and then I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to cut it. So stick with me here and I'll get you a little bit closer to the dough. Okay, so we're back here and we've got our dough and we're going to start rolling it out. And make sure you keep that flour on top of it because you don't want it to start sticking, which it's doing in some of these areas on here. Kind of gooey. Keep it so it's nice and covered with flour. It doesn't have to be in any natural shape. Your chicken stew can look as pretty or as ugly as you think it will, but what you want to do is get it to a nice thin layer, because that's when we're going to start cooking it. Okay, you can see how thin it is here. A little bit less than 1/4 of an inch, I would say. And then I'm going to take a sharp knife and we're just going to cut it. You can make straight lines, you can make, Grandma would just take it and cut it like this. And then she would maybe go across like this. And then she'd have her pieces so she could put them into the pot and cook. It's nice and thin. There's just pieces that we can just pick up off the board and we'll throw into the pot. There you go, you got your chicken pastry all ready to go. So the next step, what we're going to do here is we're going to take this pot and we're going to take some of the chicken broth from the chicken soup and we're going to put it in there. We're going to bring that to a slow simmer and boil, and then we're going to start adding the chicken stew. So I'll be right back to take you into that stage of our chicken stew. We have got our chicken broth at a boil here, so then we're going to pull the heat back so it's basically simmering. We don't want it boiling really hard, and you want to start adding your chicken pastry. You're going to add it one at a time to the boiling, and you don't want to stir it hard, but you just want to keep it moving because you don't want that pastry getting stuck, and you also don't want to break it up. So gently stir it as it's cooking and just start adding one piece at a time again until you get all of your pastry in there. It's going to get thicker as you go forward because you're adding more dough to the liquid, but the liquid will absorb into it and it's going to make it into a nice chicken pastry for you. And then we're going to season it with some ground pepper and a little bit of salt. And we're going to add our two sides to it, and we're going to have A delicious little southern dish that Grandma Lee used to make. So you'll notice some of the pieces are bigger, some of them are smaller. They come in all different sizes when you make it homemade. So just keep adding your pastry. And how do you know when it's done? Your pastry will be nice and loose. It won't be like, you can kind of see how it is here. It's not fully cooked. It's kind of like when you're cooking noodles. You kind of know when those noodles are done. A lot of people say al dente. You can make your chicken stew that way too. So one piece at a time. And you want to keep that heat on low so it's simmering. It's got a nice simmer to it, not a hard boil. Okay, we're going to keep adding our pastry, and I'm going to stir it gently as we get it to cook. And then I'm going to serve it up, and you'll see what a beautiful dish that this is going to make. Along with my two sides. And those are some special sides that were always made with this dish. So we'll be back after we get this cooked. This is going to take probably, it doesn't take long, maybe about 10 minutes. And get all of our noodles cooked here and get that broth nice and creamy. And we're going to serve this up. See you in a little bit. All right, we're back, and our chicken stew looks absolutely delicious. It cooked for about 10 minutes in the chicken broth, and it got nice and thick, and as you can see, there's your chicken pastry, all cooked up. I did some ground pepper on the top of it and added a little salt to it, and I also shredded up some of that chicken breast from my chicken soup. So the chicken breast, the chicken broth, and Grandma's chicken pastry. But we also added two of her favorite sides. Do you remember that corn that we did earlier this year? I had the whole gang here, the whole team corn, and we had the contest where we did the cream corn. Well, here's that cream corn. I took a bag of it out of the freezer. That was Grandma's special side, and her other one was her wholesome butter beans, aka lima beans, but we call them butter beans. So what a complete meal we have here. I hope you've enjoyed watching this little simple video with chicken pastry, the way it's made in the South, in North Carolina. And I hope that you'll come back and watch how I make my chicken stew with my bigger dumplings later this fall. Thanks for joining me, and happy cooking. And that's a wrap for today. Thank you for joining me in the Karen Cave. I really enjoy sharing my family recipes with you, and I hope you'll continue to come back. Please subscribe to my page and give me a thumbs up for those that you like. I look forward to next time. Until then, happy cooking.